for over 30 years. Ramon worked under the scorching desert sun of Dubai. His life was a cycle of hard labor and longing, a sacrifice he made for a family thousands of miles away in the Philippines. Every single morning, he would rise before dawn, his hands rough and calloused, his heart heavy with the distance. But each payday brought a glimmer of purpose. He would line up, sometimes for hours, just to send his earnings home money for his wife, Lorna, and their 3 children. He was building a future for them, one brick of sacrifice at a time. Every 5 or 10 years, Ramon would fly home for a short vacation. His suitcases were always overflowing with gifts, chocolates, toys, branded shirt tokens he hoped would bridge the emotional gap created by his physical absence. He imagined their smiles, their warm embraces, but as the years rolled on, the homecomings grew colder. The hugs from his children became hesitant, their eyes holding a polite distance. His wife, Lorna, no longer greeted him with that radiant smile he remembered. He felt like a visitor in his own home, or worse, a walking ATM that had finally made a personal appearance. The change was subtle at first, then painfully obvious. Before even asking about his health or his journey, Lorna's first question was always, "How much did you bring?" The question stung, but he would brush it off. This is the price of sacrifice, he'd tell himself. This is what it takes. He held on to the belief that one day they would understand the depth of what he had given up for them. He just had to endure a little longer. 30 years of this life passed in a blur of sand and sweat. Ramon's body, once strong and resilient, began to fail him. The relentless heat and the physically demanding labor had taken a severe toll on his heart. His doctor gave him stern advice. It was time to retire. The news, though concerning, brought a smile to Ramon's face. Finally, he could go home for good. He could rest. He pictured himself tending a small garden, the laughter of his grandchildren filling the air. He believed Lorna had been saving a portion of the money he sent all those years. He was ready to finally live the life he had so painstakingly built from afar. He decided to make his homecoming a surprise, a grand final gesture. He boarded the plane, his heart filled with anticipation, imagining the joyful shock on their faces. But when his taxi pulled up to the familiar address, it was Ramon who was left speechless. The gate was new, ornate, and unfamiliar. The house itself had been renovated, expanded beyond recognition. Children he didn't know were playing in the yard, their laughter echoing in the afternoon air. A man he'd never seen before came out of the house, calling to them with paternal affection. And then Lorna appeared. She was older, her face etched with the lines of time, but her voice carried the same sharp, commanding tone. As Ramon stepped out of the taxi and walked closer, the laughter died. All eyes turned to him. Lorna's widened, but not with joy or surprise. It was pure, unadulterated panic. The scene unraveled, and the truth spilled out, bitter and poisonous. Lorna had found another man. They had built a new family together, with new children, all within the walls of the house Ramon had paid for. The man living there was her new partner. The most devastating blow was yet to come. Everyone knew, his own children, who had grown up on his remittances, his parents, his aunts, the entire village, they had all kept the secret. They had allowed him to toil away in a foreign land, building a life for a family that was no longer his. When he confronted them, his voice cracking with betrayal, they showed no remorse. They told him to leave. His own son, the boy he had raised through photographs and phone calls, shouted at him, "You did nothing but send money. You were never here." In a final, cruel act, they drained what was left of his savings, emptied his bank accounts, and cast him out onto the street. After 30 years of sacrifice, Ramon was left with absolutely nothing. No family, no home, and not a single friendly face to welcome him. But they had underestimated him. They saw him only as a source of money, but they never knew the full story of his discipline. Ramon had always been a cautious man. Every payday in Dubai, after wiring the majority of his earnings to Lorna, he would take a small portion and quietly, secretly, buy gold. Tiny bars, small coins, whatever he could afford. He stored it all in a secure vault overseas, a hidden nest egg for a day he hoped would never come. In recent years, as technology evolved, he had also learned about cryptocurrency. He'd invested a modest amount in Bitcoin when it was still in its infancy, watching its value skyrocket from a distance, never touching a single cent. Now, with nothing left to lose and no one to provide for, Ramon flew back to Dubai one last time. He walked into the bank and opened that vault. 30 years of quiet, patient discipline gleamed back at him, stacks of gold bars, and a slip of paper with the keys to a digital fortune. He cashed it all out. The sum was staggering, more than he had ever dreamed of, but revenge was not on his mind. The betrayal had hollowed him out, but it had not filled him with hate. Instead, he chose to build something meaningful. He founded a special place, a sanctuary for the forgotten. It was a home for the elderly, for men and women just like him, people who had given their entire lives to families who had eventually cast them aside. He named it Bahay Ng Pagasa, the House of Hope. Here he provided warm meals, comfortable shelter, and the priceless gift of companionship. He would spend his days in the garden, not alone, but surrounded by people who understood his journey. He would sit and listen to their stories of sacrifice, heartbreak, and the quiet dignity of a life spent in service to others. Ramon had lost the family he was born into, the one tied to him by blood. But in the House of Hope, surrounded by souls who shared his silent pain and resilience, he found a new one. He was no longer a visitor, no longer an ATM. He was a father, a brother, a friend. Though he was alone by blood, Ramon was never lonely again. He discovered the profound truth that the strongest families aren't built on money or obligation, but on shared understanding, compassion, and unconditional love. He had finally found his home. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that matters.